Hey everyone, welcome to the Successful Mind Podcast. On today's episode, I want to talk about the process of failure and how essential it is to you growing in both life and business. Also, you may notice a difference in the sound quality of this episode. It happens from time to time. I hope it doesn't take away from the powerful message that you're about to receive. Be sure to stick with me through the end. Let's get into it.
You're listening to the Successful Mind Podcast.
Successful people learn how to make their minds work for them. I'm David Nagel, and this is the Successful Mind Podcast. Hey everyone, David Nagel here. Welcome to the Successful Mind Podcast. The title for today is Failure is Not an Event, It's a Process. Unless you're in Canada, then it's a process. Either way, it's going to be a good time. Okay, so what are we talking about? Well, let me tell you a story. That'll put this in some context. So, very back in the early days when I started coaching, I would run into a person on occasion that they would be doing okay in their coaching. Everything would seem to be fine. And then I would get on the phone with them one day and it would be a complete 180. They were in a totally different direction. They'd be aggressive. They'd be angry. They're pushing me out, shutting me out. And next thing I know, they quit. And I couldn't turn them around. And it was not happening a lot, but it was happening often enough that I knew that this was a major concern. And I wanted to know what was happening. I really did not understand what was going on. So I was thinking to myself, what is it that's in common with all of these things? And the one thing that was in common was they all had like this major reason why they wanted to quit coaching and why I was to blame and why they were angry and upset. And again, I can't emphasize enough, this would happen almost out of nowhere. Like I would have a call on a Tuesday, and the next Tuesday it was fine, and then the next Tuesday they were completely in a different direction. So one of the things that I knew by evaluating what was going on was that if they had a problem, that problem didn't just show up. It had to be there already. And that's where I began to reverse engineer people's failure. And the way that I did it was I recognized that, subconsciously, we all have what's known as a sabotage pattern. And a sabotage pattern, very interestingly enough, there's a couple of different ways we could actually look at this. We could actually say, in a way, it's a life-saving pattern, because the reason that we pattern to begin with is for the perseverance of our life and to keep us moving forward. Our subconscious mind does not care about the quality of our life. That's important to note here. It doesn't care if you're happy. It doesn't care what you think about yourself. It doesn't care if you're having a good time. It doesn't care if you're bored. It doesn't care about human emotion or experience in any way. It's concerned with two things. One, it is concerned with your life moving forward, right? The fact that you're actually alive and moving forward to get to the stage of procreation in your life, to move the gene pool forward. That's really all it's concerned with. And what's fascinating about that is that it has to develop and understand and operate these patterns in your life in order to be able to do that without you actually making a mistake and killing yourself. And if you think about the amount of people that actually move forward in their life versus the ones that actually make a mistake and kill themselves, the ratio is pretty fantastic. I mean, I used to say, with as many stupid things as human people do, our pattern recognition and the fact that we follow these patterns unconsciously is really remarkable in the scope of what it allows us to actually deal with. Let's take driving a car, for instance. if you think about, one day just really think about this as you get in the car to go someplace. From the moment that you decide that you're going to get in the car to go somewhere, ask yourself, how many different movements do you have to make in order to do that, right? So you're going to decide to get in the car, you're going to find your car keys, you're going to walk out the door, you're going to unlock your car, you're going to get in the car, you're going to close the door, you're going to put the key in the ignition, right? You're going to put your foot on the brake, you're going to put it in gear, you're going to look out the mirrors, you're going to look around the car, you're going to back out, you're going to judge how fast you're going so that you can stop in the appropriate amount of time, you're going to put it in drive, you're going to turn the wheel. And this just goes on and on and on and on. And we do this, and we'll drive 100 miles and not even remember the trip. And during that time, maybe you're eating a sandwich, or you're listening to a recorded book, or you're talking to somebody on the phone, or you're thinking about something that happened before you left the house, or you're thinking about where it is that you're going, or a million other things that could be running through your mind. And the whole time, subconsciously, your mind is processing information that's coming in through your eyes, processing information that's coming into your ears, processing the feeling of your body within the car, making unconscious determinations about how fast you're going, how fast you have to stop, how much pressure goes on the brake, how much pressure goes on the accelerator, how much you have to turn the wheel to stay in the lane, watching out for other cars that are moving or maybe move out of their lane, and you're doing all this unconsciously. And we do it day after day after day after day after day. And that's just driving a car. 99% of our day is unconscious. So these patterns that we develop in our unconscious mind are extraordinary with how it keeps us moving in very specific directions in our life. Now, having said that, another thing that's interesting is that we could have patterns, and we all have patterns, where we do things incorrectly, but because there's no major consequence, we don't ever change them. And here's a for instance one. So look at how many people are overweight in the world, right? That used to be that way, right? If you look 50 years ago, back in the 60s and 70s, if you look at footage, television footage of people, there were nowhere near as many people overweight. That had to be something that got programmed in somebody's mind, regardless of the consequences, and they stayed with the programming, right? Why? Because in the moment it felt good to eat. People in terrible relationships, right? People will stay in terrible relationships their whole life and never get out of the relationship, and they're not enjoying it, right? So the thing is this: we do this they do it with jobs. People stay in jobs their whole life. They stay in friendships their whole life. They do all kinds of things, and they don't necessarily enjoy it. It's not necessarily good for them, and yet they don't make the change. And actually, the programming keeps them doing the same thing. We all know that most people have difficulty, like if they're going to go on a diet, it becomes difficult for them to lose weight. How many people have had terrible times trying to quit smoking or quit drinking or quit raging at other people or quit abusing people? There's all kinds of negative habits that we have that when we decide to change them can be very difficult to actually change, especially in the beginning. And the reason is because the pattern is entrenched in our subconscious mind to keep doing this thing for whatever reason we started doing it. Now, here's the thing. If a person is looking to be successful in their life and they want to make changes to things that they're doing, they have to learn how to do things differently. And then once they learn how to do those things differently, they have to program their mind to be able to do them automatically. So one of the things that we do is we start with people teaching them how to think successfully, which is usually very different than most people are raised. And once you give them the information and show them how to think differently, a person has to consciously do that repetitively over a period of time before it becomes an unconscious process. In other words, one of the things that we'll teach them is the 7 laws of the universe and how those laws apply to absolutely every decision, every observation, every reaction, every action that a person's making in their life. But now you have to do it unconsciously. So it becomes the automatic way that you think about something. That takes time and it takes repetition. Matter of fact, there's only two ways that you could change subconscious programming. One is through what they call constant spaced repetition, where we're taking an idea or we're learning a task over and over and over and over and over again until it becomes entrenched and forms a habit. The other one is called a sudden emotional impact. And that is where something happens to you. The best way to describe this is like an accident, right? Where you develop a fear instantly. That's why they have that saying, like, if you fall off a horse, get back on. Because you don't want time for the fear to like settle into your subconscious where it turns into like a phobia or something. If you do something that scares you, the best thing is to make the correction and go back and do it again as fast as you possibly can so that fear doesn't get entrenched into your nervous system. But what happens with people that are going after success that seem to sabotage all the good things that they do in their life? What happens there? What was happening with these people that I was working with back in the early days of my career, where all of a sudden they would make this flip just instantaneously, and then everything that was good in their life, they're pushing it out, and they're coming up with the perfect reason in their mind to go in the other direction. Well, here's what's happening. Your subconscious mind is interesting in the way that it can actually notice a difference in the direction that you're taking, right? It's called a cybernetic mechanism. It's the same mechanism that would be in, say, something like a thermostat or the autopilot of an airplane. What happens with a thermostat in your house or the autopilot of an airplane? Well, it gets set. It has a set goal, right? So let's say you set the temperature in your house to be 72 degrees. If the temperature goes above 72, it senses the deviation from the set goal. It's designed to turn itself on, turn the air conditioning on, and bring the temperature back down to 72. If it drops below 72, it senses the deviation in that goal. It's designed to turn itself on, but this time it turns the heat on and brings it up to 72. If you look at the autopilot of an airplane, 90% of the time an airplane is flying, it's off course. And it's constantly sensing the deviation from the set goal, and it's making the correction to the flaps and the wings and all that stuff in order to keep it on course to bring it to its desired location, wherever it is that it may be. The subconscious mind works very much the same way. It becomes programmed very early on. It has a set course. Now, if that set course is failure and the person is trying to become successful in something, they're bringing new information in. But the subconscious mind will then sense the deviation from the set course at some point in that journey. And what it does is it starts to trigger the person to make a correction and come right back down to what it was programmed to do. So how does it do this when we're talking about failure? This is where it gets really fascinating. So let's say that a person wanted to become a millionaire, and they come to us, we're working with them, and we set up a series of tasks and actions and behaviors that they have to do in order to reach that end goal. We put a time frame on it, and they're all set. Here we go. Going to help them get their business to the point where they can earn $1 million for themselves. And they start to go down that road. Sometime after they pass their highest income state, in other words, every person, every adult, if you ask them, what is your greatest income in 12 months, everybody has some kind of a number. What most people don't realize is that number is what we call a financial set point in their mind. It's a subconscious set point. And once a person starts to go above that set point, it starts to get uncomfortable for them. And the reasons for this vary based on a person's experience, what their childhood was like, and their relationship to money. But I will tell you that in every case, it starts to be uncomfortable. If the person doesn't understand what that uncomfortable feeling is that's inside of them and how to deal with it, automatically their subconscious mind will change what they're focusing on in what they're doing. And it'll give them every exact excuse that they need to literally turn around and sabotage themselves, including becoming enemies or blaming people that are working with them to actually help them get where they want to go. That was one of the strangest things that I experienced when I first started doing this, was not only did a person have an excuse for not wanting to continue on in this journey to the goal that they set for themselves. They wanted this goal. But whatever the excuse was that they would come up with, they would then turn around and blame me for it. And I was like, how are they blaming me because their spouse is yelling at them because they're making a change in their life? It just didn't make any sense. But once I began to understand that this change that takes place in them is getting them to create whatever excuse they've been using their whole life, or a series of them, everything else outside of them is just a marker. In other words, it doesn't matter who the person is, they just need a person. So the person could be a spouse, it could be a friend, it could be a coach, it could be a mentor, it could be somebody at the gas station. It could be absolutely anybody. They just need a marker. If they have historically blamed other people for certain things in their life, when that trigger happens and it starts to engage their sabotage strategy, they will find the person that they need in order to start blaming somebody in order to go backwards. The crazy part about this is that they actually believe that this is happening. In other words, they start literally hallucinating the experience as they're going through it. So as long as they're in that frame of mind, the subconscious is so powerful that it shuts everything out as far as logic or reason goes. They do not want to hear it. Now you might think to yourself, oh, come on. That sounds absolutely ridiculous. Well, let's think about this for a moment. Let's go back to the car analogy. Let's say that you're driving a car and you see a little kid runs right out in front of you while you're driving. Do you have to think about putting the brake on, or do you, as soon as you notice it, you snap and slam on those brakes? It's a reaction you don't even think about. You automatically know what to do the moment that you sense something is wrong outside of the way that you're supposed to be driving that vehicle in order to be safe. And we do this with so many different things in our life. It's incredible. The mind can react so fast that if you actually had to think about the reaction, you'd probably run over the kid, or you would drive right into the back of the car in front of you. Think about when somebody slams on the brakes. The moment you notice it, bam, you slam on the brakes. But if you had to think, I wonder how fast I need to push on the brake, and bam, you'd slam right into the back of that car, like it would happen instantaneously. It's the same way with success. The moment a person starts to go beyond their comfort zone, the subconscious mind kicks in. And what it does is it starts creating the emotions and the ideas about why they're going in the wrong direction. And then it starts looking for whatever common excuse has been programmed in their mind to blame other people or to blame things. So it could be themselves, it could be things, it could be other people, it could be situations, it could be circumstances, it could be results, it could be the waning of their desire for what it is that they want, whatever the programming could be. There's something called bright shiny object syndrome, where a person they'll start to get close to a goal, and then boom, they see something else that becomes more attractive, and then they get on that one, and then boom, they see something else that's more attractive, and then they get on that one, and boom, they see something else that's more attractive. That's called bright shiny object syndrome. They can't ever finish what they're doing because there's always something else that they think that they need to be involved with. Or a person who starts to go down the road towards success and they always get sick. They start to get close to the goal, they get sick and they have to stop. Then they get themselves healed, they start to get close to the goal again, they get sick and they stop. You see this in relationships. They start to get close to a goal, they get in a fight with their spouse, or they get in a fight with their business partner, or they get in a fight with their lover, or they get in a fight with their friend. They get that fixed, they start to go towards again, bam, another fight, another disagreement, another argument, another contention that's happening in their life. We see it with problems with kids, right? You have a person that's got children. As soon as they start to get close to the goal, the kids start misbehaving or start getting in trouble. They have to take their mind off of what they're doing, and now they have to deal with this family situation that's going on. We see it with pets run away, right? You name it. I've seen it. in this industry. The perfect excuse for why a person will stop. I had a client one time, every time she started to get close to her goal, somebody in her family started dying. Every single time. So the idea was this. As I began to evaluate this, I realized that, okay, this subconscious programming of this sabotage pattern had to be there before they started to want whatever it is they want. So whenever I take a client on, one of the first things that we do is we uncover what their sabotage pattern is in detail before we actually start working with them on what they want. Because not only do they create the perfect excuse, they will make anybody who was an ally in getting the goal now an enemy. And the moment they make you an enemy, they can't hear you anymore because they've already decided it's your fault that they're in whatever situation or experiencing whatever they're experiencing. Even at the very least, if it was just going past the idea of whatever their fear was, they make you the enemy. So we sit down with a person and we look at them, we talk to them, we evaluate where they want to go, and we talk about what they're going to have to do to get there. And then the conversation sounds something like this. Tell me about a time when you were heading toward a goal in your past and you failed. And then I want to know exactly how you failed. What happened? Give me step by step what happened. So that's why we said failure is not an event, it's a process. It starts with something. And where does failure start? It starts with the new goal. That's where you'll see it start. But unbeknownst to that person, they don't realize that engagement of that process literally begins the moment that they start thinking about doing something new. Because the subconscious mind goes on alert. And it's going, wait a minute. I don't know that this is safe to go in this direction. And then the closer you start to move toward past your own comfort zone or past your financial set point, that's when the subconscious mind starts kicking in and you start hallucinating things. Now you might think to yourself, but David, I've been through this. I'm not hallucinating anything. It wasn't a hallucination that my kids got sick or that my spouse got upset with me or that my car broke down or that my pet died or whatever. No, they're not. But the way that you view those problems is a hallucination. In other words, here's something that you have to remember. Everybody has those problems. We all have problems in our life that show up on a regular basis. The difference between successful people and other people that have a real difficult time becoming successful is how do they handle those problems? Because your responsibilities don't go away because you have a problem, right? Your need for an income doesn't go away because you have a problem. If you're building a business, whatever it is that you have to do in that business doesn't go away because you've got a problem. So the question becomes, now, what are you going to do when these problems show up? Because if you start to go spiraling down into an old behavior, it's not just a problem. The problem becomes the perfect excuse. So part of the key to unraveling this is to look at the last time that you failed at something and ask yourself, what was the reason that you gave for quitting or stopping or not moving forward or whatever? Because you'll probably think it was a legitimate reason, and in actuality, it was actually an excuse. It wasn't a legitimate reason. So the idea would be to write that down. And to write down as much about whatever the process was as that you possibly can. So let's start like this. You write down, what was the goal? What was the initial thing that you wanted to change? Okay. Then what was your plan on getting that goal? Did you hire a coach or a mentor? Did you create a plan? Did you create a business plan, a financial breakthrough plan? Whatever it is that you were going after, what was your plan? And then when did the rationality of problems start showing up as it related to the plan that you were actually moving toward? So what I'm saying is this. I'm not so concerned about the problem that showed up. I want to know, when did you start thinking the way that you did about the problem, right? Because you'll say to yourself, yeah, but I can't control what somebody else does. No, you can't control what somebody else does, but you sure as well can control what you do in relation to someone else. But the moment that that thing takes on more importance than the direction that you're actually going in your life, you will always put the problem ahead of where you want to go for what it is that you want to do. And the result is that every time you do that, you make your sabotage pattern stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And it becomes more and more difficult to actually break through it. Because every time you give yourself the perfect reason, and before you know it, you seriously start believing in those reasons. Like, you will make them very, very real in your life. So the key is to understand, number one, everybody has problems. Sure, we all have problems that are a little bit different, right? But we all have problems. And when a person is going to be successful, they figure out a way to deal with those problems regardless of what has to be done in order for themselves to be successful. Rarely does a person stop doing the things that they're committed to deal with a problem unless it's an extreme emergency. Because most problems, believe it or not, can actually get scheduled at a time where you could literally work on them and stay conscious about them and stay as non-emotional as possible as you're actually dealing with that problem. That's important to know. Every problem is not an emergency, and every other person's problem is not an emergency. But that's something that we have to kind of emotionally mature into as we're moving forward with it, right? Because if, let's say you were raised in a household where there was just constant drama. Every time something was going on, there was this drama and the whole house was upset and everybody had to change what was going on. That is emotional immaturity. And that has to be changed as you're an adult so that you're not constantly hyper-reacting to things going wrong, because things go wrong every day. But you literally schedule or put them down into a process so that you can deal with them in a responsible way without having your emotions, so skyrocketed into drama that you literally sabotage everything that you're trying to do good for yourself in your life. So let's remember this, right? Failure is not an event. It's never something that happens to you. It's a process, which also means it's a decision that you're making about the events in your life that you convince yourself to stop moving forward. Nobody actually fails. They quit. Think about that. Thanks for listening today. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Successful Mind Podcast. If you like what you heard and you want to learn more, go to lifeisnowinc.com. I'll see you next week.